Welcome, folks, to Fogo Island Pride's first online, or I suppose not really the first online event at this point in time, as yesterday on Sunday, Fogo Island, we had our very first virtual and semi-in-person flag raising, kicking off our Pride Week here on Fogo Island for 2020, kickstarting a whole week-long series of events, both virtually and in person here on Fogo Island. So thank you so much for joining us. This is our panel discussion, and specifically it is on LGBTQ2 SIA plus rural experiences. And it's something that we really did want to highlight. It's very much ingrained in our mandate and a topic that is not really spoken of a whole lot. And we wanted to really take time to acknowledge that this week. So we've got a series of guests lined up from all over the province and outside the province on top of that. We've also got some local entertainment who are going to be jumping in throughout our broadcast with, I guess, keep it lively. Because, I mean, what's a show without a bit of music in Newfoundland and Labrador, right? So just to run down through the panel here, we do have our performer is Maddie Mulland. We're also being then joined by TJ Lightfoot, Jake Decker, Claudia Lilly, and Gerry Rogers. We're going to be engaging in a series of discussions on a number of topics really that affect the queer community in rural Newfoundland and Labrador. So first off, I do want to say that this is a space of learning. That there's people who are going to be here at different places in their own understanding of gender identity and gender expression and sexual orientation. And we're all here as learners, and we're all willing to make mistakes and take risks. And it's going to be a good experience for everybody. At least we're going to strive to make it a very good experience for everybody. And speaking of which, we do want to take a moment to rectify something, because at our flag raising yesterday, we, I guess in the midst of it, trying to make sure that we had all of the tech issues sorted out, we never made a land acknowledgement to the First Nations and Indigenous people here in Newfoundland and Labrador. So we're going to right that wrong here this afternoon. So Fogo Island Pride would like to respectfully acknowledge the territory in which we live and work as the ancestral homeland of the Beothuk, and the island of Newfoundland as the ancestral homelands of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk. We'd also like to recognize the Inuit of Nunatsiavut and Nunatuavut, and the Innu of Nitassen and their ancestors as the original people of Labrador. In addition, we've also made a commitment this year, Fogo Island Pride, that we stand in solidarity with the diverse persons and people of this province as we search for collective healing, reconciliation, and the reimagining of our social, political, and economic structures to end systemic racism, which further marginalizes Black, Indigenous, and Canadians of color. So we wanted to make sure that we righted that wrong from yesterday, and going forward, it's going to be part of all of our events. All right, so we do want to get things rolling. So we've got a very jam-packed hour. So I think first up, to get us started with a bit of entertainment, we're going to bring in Maddie. Maddie's waiting in the wings. Hello, Maddie.
Hi. I had my mic turned off.
There we go. We can hear you. Awesome.
Hi.
So I wanted to, I guess, to give you a brief introduction before we hand the stage over for a song to get us started. That Maddie was actually one of the first performers, really, for Fogo Island Pride. That during our art auction last year, you and I guess your what we call your partner in crime showed up at one of our events, and I would say we've made a connection.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'll hand the stage over to you, and you can get us started.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be starting with a song that I messaged Trevor like 20 minutes ago, and I was like, "Is there any songs that you might want me to sing?" And he was like, "Well, Joe Betts' Arm Long Loners is always a good one." So I do a lot of Newfoundland music and things like that. And so I'm going into my third year of voice studies at the School of Music in Mon. And I just finished this program called the Cultural Ambassador Program with the San Mountain Traditional Arts Foundation. And so we perform in seniors' homes and daycares with kids and anywhere where people don't get to experience a lot of live music. And so this year it was actually all done online, but we go to the homes and we go to those places and sing for those people and perform for those people. So the first song I'm going to be starting with is the Joe Betts Arm Longliners. If you come back home to Newfoundland, put aside your city charm. Stop off at the fish plant in a place called Joe Betts Arm. As you approach that busy scene, you'll see some fishermen. But most of all, you'll see the big longliners coming in. For the Joe Betts Arm longliners, they're coming home tonight. As they steam up the harbor, you can see their masthead lights. With their hardy crews and captains, they're the finest fishermen. And the girls are all excited, the longliners coming in. There's Gilbert in the Stella, she's loaded down with skate. And Justin in the Endeavor with Billy Burke, his mate. With their hardy crews and captains, they're the finest fishermen. And the girls are all excited, the longliners coming in. For the Joe Betts Arm longliners, they're coming home tonight. As they steam up the harbor, you can see their masthead lights. With their hardy crews and captains, they're the finest fishermen. And the girls are all excited, the longliners coming in. They'll be dancing at the motel until the early dawn. To the finest band at Tilting Club, they're swinging arm in arm. And there's all those pretty island girls, they're serving up the beer. And tomorrow morning, all the boys must be back at the pier. For the Joe Betts Arm longliners, they're coming home tonight. As they steam up the harbor, you can see their masthead lights. With their hardy crews and captains, they're the finest fishermen. And the girls are all excited, the longliners coming in. With their hardy crews and captains, they're the finest fishermen. And the girls are all excited, the longliners coming in. And the girls are all excited, the longliners coming in.
Thank you so much, Maddie. What a great way to start off our panel discussion. I'm sure the hearts are melting, all the Fogo Islanders out there watching. So we'll be getting you back. Don't go too far. And about halfway through the show, we'll get you back to with another tune.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so to get our panel started off now, we're going to welcome TJ Lightfoot. We're going to wait for TJ's bio to show up here, so everyone is aware of. Here we go. Can I get a black background there? Oh. Nope, still I can do. Okay. All right, just 1 second, folks. I'm just gonna quickly bring up TJ's bio so I can read it there. Again, see, technical issues. We're still, again, we entered this place as learners, and we are holding to that. We are keeping to it wholeheartedly. Actually, you know what? On second thought, let's just bring out TJ. Let's do that. Because welcome, TJ.
Hey, thanks.
But say now, so why would I read from a screen and tell everyone who you are when you are here and you can speak for yourself? So yeah, I guess just give us a real quick rundown of who you are and maybe what brought you here.
Sure. So my name is TJ Lightfoot. I'm a two-spirit person originally from Elsipogtog First Nation. Currently living in Iqaluit, but as you know, I have a history with Trevor and Evan when you worked and lived in Makobik.
That's right. Yeah. And I know we've had many discussions here, and really when I was thinking about, okay, who am I going to get here for this panel? You immediately came to my mind. So you've spent a considerable amount of time in rural places, really all over the country. So both in Labrador and now in Nunavut.
Yeah.
Yeah, with your wife and your child. So you've not only been a member of the LGBTQ2 SIA plus community, living in a rural area. You've also been raising a family. So how has that been like? What are your experiences been like?
So I think when I really think about it, I kind of try to divide like my timelines between when we lived in Nunatsiavut versus when we live in Iqaluit. In Nunatsiavut, not surprisingly, we actually were very well receptive. Like everyone was really welcoming and loving. I think for us, a lot of the groundwork as far as like people being out and open had already happened previously. Like my wife is originally from Nain and Makobik. So her family members had already done kind of a lot of the footwork when it comes to normalizing sexuality, right? Whereas we got married, moved back home to Makobik, and then started our family there. And then eventually, like once we finished school, because I went to do my master's at Grenfell, we moved up to Iqaluit because Inuktitut was really important, like our core value that we wanted to pass on to our daughter. So a lot of our experiences, if people don't know about Iqaluit, Iqaluit is like an urban indigenous community. It's a city. So even though it's still a fly-in community, it still has a lot of the, I guess, like services that smaller cities would have. If that makes sense.
And I guess speaking to then those services, have you noticed then or maybe even then from not necessarily your own experiences, but maybe some of your friends and your family, and we've often discussed this too, that access to, say, mental health services or medical health services, maybe for trans folk, are not necessarily readily available. And if you look at that discrepancy between you on the coast of Labrador, but then you in Iqaluit, is there a more of a how can I say this, a drive for people to be in those larger centers?
I think yes and no. Like I think there would be, just because you would think that you have more access to more, right? But I think in our experience too, like the best healthcare as far as like being out two-spirit person for me was in Makobik. And I think part of that came from the fact that like the nurse was my aunt-in-law and the other nurse was, you know, seeing my wife grow up from childhood. So I know that for some people it can put barriers because, you know, you might not want to put out your sexual health information to someone that you're so intimately connected. But it's also like it was an advantage for us in that like we were able to educate and bring our nurses and healthcare providers along with us. So sometimes they would do extra reading on their own and find out about what services are available. Whereas like in Iqaluit, there's so much turnover with a lot of transients that information doesn't necessarily stay. So what you find is that you end up having to come out and come out again and come out again. Like it almost looks like a revolving door sometimes.
Yeah, and that's really something that connection really that's been established in rural places, small towns. We often talk about, or at least it's often assumed that it's very much a negative thing that you know everybody is in your business. But as you just described it, it's actually something that really helped you get access to better healthcare because you were so close and because you had those connections.
Oh, for sure. And then like even thinking about once our bunny was old enough, our daughter was old enough to start the school, like in school, it was really great having that intimate connection with all of her educators because they were open to us like bringing in extra resources. They knew our families, they knew all our connections. So when I went in and had the paper like completely rewritten, there was no they were like, oh, I just never thought about it that way before, and they were really willing to just accept it and change their papers, and it was like it wasn't an issue.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? That's and I would be interested to know what those experiences then comparably would be like if you were in an urban center and then you were often up against these big bureaucratic machines trying to get something done and something changed that is really righting wrong, and then moving that system forward. That your ability to enact change in a smaller town or smaller community,
Big
right? Yeah.
Well,
All right. So sit tight. We're going to put you backstage for a second because now we're going to bring Jake Decker into the conversation. So you wait in the wings and we'll bring you back out in about 5 minutes. There we go. Okay, so we are going to get Jake out here now, Jake Decker, also speaking on rural experiences in Canada. And again, we won't bring the bio up because we're having a bit of technical problems trying to get it up and read it. So I'll a bit of a spoiler that Jake is from Fogo Island and is also a member of our Fogo Island Pride Committee. So we'll welcome Jake.
Hi.
Hi, Jake. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Now, let's say also spoiler alert. Jake is. Tell us where you are, Jake, because I think it's. I think we could wave at each other right now.
About 10 feet away.
There we go. So I guess a bit of a background, Jake. What brings you here? What makes you tick?
Well, I remember when we started Pride, you approached me and said, "Hey, do you want to join?" And ever since leaving high school, I hadn't really done much activism, and so I saw this as a really fun opportunity. And I felt kind of being the only out kid in the school. It was important for me to maybe do something, once I had left. And this is the perfect opportunity for it.
Okay, so it was this almost like a commitment to the community and to the LGBTQ2 plus SIA community. Like that was something you really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've mentioned there that you were the only out kid in high school. I don't know if you want to go into that story a bit.
Yeah, I don't have anything like horribly tragic to say, which I think speaks to how...
That's best kind. That's
Yeah.
okay.
I think it speaks to how rural communities are, being more open to people of different sexualities and gender expressions and things like that. Now I'm one person and I'm very cis and white presenting and a little bit masculine presenting, so I think that might have helped. But everything was good. I think I came out in the summer going into grade 8 or 9. I can't exactly remember because it was from the time me realizing I was gay to me coming out was like less than a year. But yeah, nothing horrible, which, like I said, speaks to people.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's great because clearly you must have had then the support of your friends and your family and maybe the teachers at the school. So I mean, to be able to put yourself out there so young, I mean that speaks volumes. I mean, I've told the story in public a good many times that myself knowing in grade 6 that at least I wasn't straight to being in grade 11 before actually saying anything. I mean, it's a long amount of time. So I mean, it's commendable to be able to come out really so young and then feel that you can. Now, you made mention there that being cisgendered, maybe helped it. How come?
It was one piece. Me being gay was one piece to it, and like if there was like a box, what most Fogo Islanders are is male, female, white, straight. The only piece that didn't quite fit was like being gay. I was still white presenting. I'm still white. I'm still a cisgender male. I'm still, I'm not anywhere in between on gender binaries. I identify firmly as male. So I didn't have those obstacles to deal with. So I can't really speak to how people with those obstacles, I'll say, for lack of a better term, would experience it on the island. But for me, it's been good.
Yeah, and I know we've had conversations in the past. The idea about there's a certain level of comfort in, I guess, the familiar, and I guess being that cisgender really is the familiar, right? And the challenges that come along with not necessarily fitting in that binary. And now we had a very interesting conversation. I do think I really wanted to bring it up about the role that technology plays in rural location. If you're a member of the queer community, go ahead, because it's very interesting, and I had never thought of it.
So these were like kind of thoughts I've been thinking of, like moving to St. John's. So for being on the island, I was the only out kid, so like I didn't get to do the traditional like have a high school romance kind of thing. So you turn to dating apps, and I'm not going to name any of them, but you know what they are. And I think it contributes a lot to a toxic dating culture, a toxic view of relationships and other dating partners within your community, because like you move to town and there are more gay people there, but you don't experience that, and it's all you only think that they want to hook up because people from rural Newfoundland most of the time grow up using these apps as kind of like a way to find like another person that can relate to your struggles. And you have to be 18 for a reason to be on these apps, and a lot of times it's not the case. A lot of younger people are using them.
Yeah, and I know anybody here in the audience who is familiar with what happens sometimes in those online apps, it's definitely not PG-13. And to your point, it's really exposing. I mean, with no other options really to get access to the community. And then here's this app that's designed literally to connect you with somebody within the community, or at least somebody who's posing or presenting themselves as being part of the community. It is creating, I guess how you described it, we've talked about before, this like hookup culture. And you did mention to me before, and it was the idea that then we're taking that culture and then we're bringing it somewhere else. And generally we're bringing it into more urban places.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I definitely think it would be in these urban places if rural communities didn't exist, but I do think people moving into like urban centers from rural communities amplifies it a lot more.
And is that a common experience that the members of the queer community here would move? Like that was the default?
Yeah, because I mean, you and Evan are a bit of an anomaly. You moved to a rural community.
It's true. We are odd ducks.
But like a lot of my friends in town who are gay or queer, they, from rural Newfoundland, they're like, yeah, like part of the reason, other than school, because that's the majority of the reason people might move. A lot of them said that they just had to get out of that community and just like know that people like them exist in other spaces, which again is lacking.
Yeah, and you know what? Establishing those connections. I've since talked about how since COVID-19 and all of this has happened, I've actually felt more connected to my communities because of technology and what it's been able to do to bridge, right? That the distance and geography of Newfoundland and Labrador. I am going to bring TJ back into the conversation though now for a bit of a round here. There we go. We got TJ back. Any immediate responses to maybe some of the stuff that Jake was saying? Tej?
Yeah, I find it really interesting, but especially about the having to move to the city, because I think when we think, mostly I'm thinking about students in Nunatsiavut, but when they move to the city, it's often because they're starting to pursue like post-secondary, right? And often that's normally when they have time and space, like you said, to start to understand their sexuality and their gender. And maybe that means, I don't know if that's shifted a bit now that there's more technology in the smaller communities as to opposed to like in the early 90s or even early 2000s. So it'd be interesting to find out if there's a connection between like Indigenous and out people versus like cis white male.
Yeah, because I imagine there's a lot of parallels that are being established there, right? That it's very, I would imagine it's very much the same in remote and rural Indigenous communities, that you do need to leave to get that education oftentimes. I mean, even I'm from Conception Bay South, I'm around the Bay, and that's the only reason I didn't leave, because I could actually drive to the university I attended, right? But I mean, that's not the case for, even for Jake, that wasn't an option.
And it's really interesting here too in Iqaluit that there's a pride group, which is mostly like Southern people and their Halunaq, versus there's like smaller groups of Indigenous out families that hang out together. And so I wonder if in St. John's, is there something similar?
I'm not quite sure. Jake, would you have any insider knowledge there, Jake?
I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there was maybe something a bit similar. But from my interactions and like the friends I have in the community, it's like I haven't seen it personally, but maybe something gets started.
Well, I would say it seems like there's space for growth in that case, maybe. Right? There's a space there for someone to get in and really create a community. Now, really quickly, just look at my producer. How much time do we have here for the segment? We've got 4 minutes. Okay, so we're good. So about 2 minutes each. What keeps you in a rural? What keeps you? Well, I guess like for yourself, Jake. What keeps you home? What keeps you? What keeps you coming back to a rural location? Because myself and Evan. For anybody who doesn't know, Evan is my partner. Started Fogo Pride with me, co-founder and co-director. We purposefully have chosen to live in a rural and remote small town. So what is it for yourself, TJ? What keeps you in rural Canada?
I think a big part of it is sense of community, right? I think that like having support and knowing my neighbor and knowing the people and being able to approach whatever infrastructure we're dealing with familiar faces, people that I know that actually care, as opposed to like being in an urban setting where you're just an anonymous number. And if you get attacked for being out or for something you said, like what happened with MMIWG, for me, like here, people check in on you and there's a general sense of concern, and people celebrate with you, like the successes of your family and your child. And I think that's priceless.
Yeah, and that's I think something, because there was a particular incident last year that ended our pride. And I won't get into it right now because it's actually it's a pretty upsetting story. But that being said, what happened after the fact was the rallying of the community around Fogo Island Pride was really heartwarming and really then made us more committed than what we were before. Jake, what keeps you on Fogo Island?
COVID at the moment.
Outside of the last 4 months.
Yeah. Well, mainly just like my living situation in town. I lived in a residence at Mon, so I would come home in the summer. But for right now, like I'm staying home just because, like TJ was saying, there is a sense of community, and it's nice to be around familiar faces, and you're not just a number. But I'm also saying that I do. Hopefully, when the world returns back to normal, I would like to live in Toronto or just like a big urban area, because I've never experienced that personally, really. But that's more like personal, just like the way I am, as opposed to being part of the queer community.
And yeah, sorry to cut you off. Just that feeling, we've made the argument before that. Or at least the argument's been made to us that you have to leave if you're a queer person in a rural place, because there's no options for you. And we've always rallied against that no, like your community is here too, and it is just as much yours as anybody else's. So yeah, that there's no necessity to leave, right? Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. Stick around. Thank you so much to Jake Decker, student and Fogo Island Pride Committee member, and TJ Lightfoot, who has so many, what's the word? I don't want to say careers at this point in time, but I would say we should put the bio back up so everyone could read it, because it's extensive. So thank you so much. Stick around. We'll get you back towards the end, I think. Awesome. All right. So we are at the halfway mark now for our rural discussion our rural experiences of LGBTQ2 SIA+. We do have and I remiss by not saying that we do actually have a room set up for those who do need extra support. Have we put that into the channel yet? Okay, all right. So I'm very sorry. We should have done this right from the top. There is a link that if someone is out there watching and is upset by something that we were speaking about, because we do understand that not everyone's experiences were as good as our own, that it is set up that people can go and get that support that they need. So in a few minutes, we'll put that link into our comments, into our chat. So if anybody is out there who's being upset by these conversations, they can go there for support. All right. We'll get that up and running. And in the meantime, we're going to go back to Maddie. Maddie's waiting in the wings.
Hi.
Hi again. All right. So I'm going to pass it right back on over to you. And I think we've got time. How much time does she have? We've got 6 minutes.
Okay, I think I might only get one song because it's another song about Fogo Island, actually. So I'm from Musgrave Harbour, if anybody didn't know, which is like, I can see Fogo Island, like the lights, but I can't. It takes a lot longer to get there, but I can see it. So this is a song that I learned a few years ago. It's an a cappella song, or I sing it a cappella, and it's called The Green Shores of Fogo. It was written in like 1900 or something like that. Our bark leaves this harbor tomorrow, across the wide ocean to go. Katie, a burden of sorrow. It is more than I wish you to know. Farewell to the green shores of Fogo. Farewell, Katie, dear, true and good. For I know there's one loving me truly. In old Fogo I'm leaving behind. Now, Katie, give over your sighing, and don't be downhearted for me. It's my fortune I'm after seeking, in a far distant land or the sea. Farewell to the green shores of Fogo. Farewell, Katie, dear, true and kind. For I know there's one loving me truly. In old Fogo I'm leaving behind. There's a dark cloud of sorrow hanging o'er me. There's a precious great weight on my mind. For wherever I will go, I'll be true to thee. Since old Fogo I'm leaving behind. Farewell to the green shores of Fogo. Farewell, Katie, dear, true and kind. For wherever I may go, I'll be true to thee. Since old Fogo I'm leaving behind. Farewell to the green shores of Fogo. Farewell, Katie, dear, true and kind. For I know there's one loving me truly. In old Fogo I'm leaving behind. So that's The Green Shores of Fogo. And I believe that song was collected by Kenneth Peacock in the 80s when he collected in the 60s, sorry, when he collected a whole bunch of Newfoundland songs and put a bunch of books together. He collected it from a lady named, her name was Katie, I can't remember her last name, Kate. No, it's Kate something anyways. And she was older. She was in her 80s or 90s when he collected it. And they think she was married to a man named John Fogarty, not the John Fogarty, but a John Fogarty. And from Fogo. And they think it was written by an English sailor who came over in the 1900s and might have met this lady, Kate Miller, and wrote and fell in love with her, and then had to leave and go away back to England again and never came back. And so, he wrote that song for her. So that's The Green Shores of Fogo. How much more time do I have left, Trevor?
I think we're just about out, actually.
Cool.
So
Cool
that was beautiful, though. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's people here clapping. I don't know if you could hear them now or not. I love how so much of singing is storytelling, and it really comes out in our Newfoundland music.
It's some really awesome It's really awesome stories in Newfoundland music for sure.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much. We'll get you back in the wings again. Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you, Maddie. All right. We are going to take some time to highlight. There we go. So that support room we did mention. So there is the link. I believe that is also posted in our comments as well. Again, if anybody is experiencing any upsetting feelings because, these things can bring back some really terrible memories for some people being in remote or rural locations and not necessarily having that support. So that room there is open. Do believe you can sign in as a guest. You got a Google account, it'll make your life a little bit easier. Okay, so moving on. We are going to now welcome Claudia Lilly to the proverbial, the virtual stage. Hello, Claudia.
How are you today?
I am not too bad at all. There is a heat warning on Fogo Island for like the third time this summer. Global warming is real, and it's here.
In Fogo.
As everyone around me now laughs. Awesome. So I'll throw it over to you to start us off. A very interesting story you bring to the table. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Claudia Lilly, as you heard. So in 2018, I was involved with the Springdale Crosswalk. I was one of the 3 representatives from the GSA who spoke to our town council, and I did a lot of question answering and such for the media with the crosswalk when it was ongoing. So,
yeah, and I guess for anybody who doesn't know what the Springdale Crosswalk story is, well, I guess I can let you tell it. You know it better than I do. But essentially, it was it was proposed to the town office to put a rainbow crosswalk in, an inclusive crosswalk in, and that was ultimately denied. And there was a lot of media that came out about that.
Indeed, yeah. We as a GSA, we wanted to have one, and we wrote a letter and we gave it to them, and we defended it and gave some pros and cons or such for a meeting, and we didn't get our crosswalk, but we have Pride Week every year now, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, but there's so many places in rural Newfoundland, Labrador who don't have a Pride Week at all. I mean, this is only the second one for Fogo Island, and just looking over at my partner here, Bay St. George, Corner Brook, Grand Falls. I mean, you really could probably count on 2 hands at this point how many places outside of St. John's really have a Pride Week. So, I mean, that's amazing. And it all really started with this letter, this petition, this asking the town. And even though it didn't quite go the way that you wanted to, I mean, there's definitely some good there. So you must have really then felt supported by your teachers in the school if your GSA was going to write this letter.
Yes, definitely. We have 2 representatives that are teachers for the GSA in Springdale. I don't know if since I've left there's been more, maybe, but honestly, the teachers in IRH were behind us. I couldn't say there was a negative response I got out of anybody, really. There was an overwhelming positive support with the cross.
Awesome. I mean, and it does speak volumes, but to have those adults in your life, especially when you're a teenager, and you're pushing for change, to know that you've got that support there, I guess really does mean it speaks volumes. It makes things so much easier. So one thing now, were you ever worried about, I suppose, the backlash that came of possibly doing something like this, especially something that was so different and so new? Did it ever cross your mind, or was it, nope, let's go?
Well, before the crosswalk happened, I wasn't very outgoing. I really didn't speak up whole lot, but when we were told that it was denied the first time and I had the opportunity to speak to council, there was no second guessing. I volunteered. I wanted to speak. I needed to get my opinions out there at that time. There was no way I would second guess it. I wouldn't say at the time, especially. Now I definitely don't regret speaking at that time.
No, and you know what? I think that is something that though stops a lot of us from speaking up. That okay, we know something. What's going to happen now that I've gone there and done this. So if you had to give any advice, I suppose someone watching now, or maybe this is a pre-recording, or maybe you're watching they're watching this next year sometime. We don't know. But if there's someone looking around their community now and they're saying to themselves, you know what, we need something like this too. We need to have a Pride Week. We need to have an inclusive crosswalk. What advice would you give them?
Honestly, the advice that I would give would be go for it. There's no shame in trying, even if you don't get the outcome you want. Honestly, it leaves an experience that you can learn from in the future, and you can learn from others as well. I would never, ever regret it in my lifetime. Honestly, why not? That's the question, is why not?
Okay. At the end of the day, what? They're going to say no. That's the worst thing that could really possibly happen. And then you just got to re-strategize and really do something different, come at it from a different way. Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, it was definitely a unique experience. We've got about 2 more minutes here. Do you think there is a divide in between? Because obviously this push came from the school, and was most of the support in the school, or was it in the greater? Was it within the community as well?
The community, in its own, they really came through to show their support for us. I saw so many Pride flags even before we got our Pride Week. People putting things on their fences. Honestly, it was overwhelming. Like, even in the surrounding communities, because Springdale is surrounded by smaller communities in Green Bay. We even had people from the surrounding communities putting up their flags and such and ordering flags to put up and everything. It was amazing.
That's great. Because you never really quite know, I suppose, how much support is really out there in the community until you really start going and looking for it.
Definitely.
I mean, people were raising money for you completely no connection with, and then suddenly, no, we'll give you all the money to do this. Here you go. Right. Really speaks, I suppose, to the community, not just within, I suppose, Springdale or any rural place, but really Newfoundland and Labrador as a whole, to be able to come together. We've often talked about, we're all these little locations that are really geographically separated, but when, times are tough and when, the chips are down, we really do all come together. Right. And when it's for such a good cause as what you folks were championing, that means the world.
Indeed. Yeah, it was amazing. I did not see any negatives, honestly. I could only see positive support from I'm on a few social medias. I would check Facebook every now and then. I didn't see anything negative in my page.
Yeah, no. And it is self-care to not check the comments in general. That's good mental health advice for anybody out there, I guess, who's really doing things like this. And we might get into that conversation now in a second. We're going to put you backstage again, and we're going to bring out our last and final guest. Thank you so much, Claudia. Really appreciate it. We'll get you back. And next up, again, I don't think this person has an introduction at all. So we are going to bring out Gerry Rogers. Very delighted to have Gerry here. Hello, Gerry.
Hello, Trevor. Thanks so much for doing this, and happy Pride, Fogo. It's so fabulous.
I would say it's been great so far. We had a really good turnout for our virtual flag racing, because we're going by views now online. Really, it's what's telling us how many people are engaged nowadays.
Wow, it's just great. I mean, when I was younger, I'm going to be 64 next week. So many changes in my life. So many changes, and we all stand on the shoulders of incredible, fearless, courageous, creative queer activists to get to this point, and our allies as well. But not only courageous and fearless, people who were afraid but still pushed through. So, like, how fabulous is this? Pride on Fogo. Pride.
Yeah, a lot of people said to us that this is not something like they're flabbergasted that this is something that's actually happening. But now I don't want to take away from your introduction, because you yourself, you've got some very notable. You were part of that. You are very much when we talk about queer icons. You're there. And I don't know now if you know, but you are actually you made it to our Pride Guide. You've got a page. So yeah. So I don't know if you want to take some time and I guess give us a little bit of the history of what you've brought to our community, because it's quite extensive.
Yeah, well, I was born in Corner Brook, and my dad was from St. John's. Mom was from the Great Northern Peninsula in Port Saunders. And we moved away when I was quite young because Dad joined the Army. And so we moved all over the place. And I came out, I was living in Montreal. I was working at the National Film Board of Canada. I was a filmmaker. I was a film producer. And that's where and when I came out. And my parents and my brother were living in Newfoundland, and my sister was living in Manitoba. And I was in Montreal. I was 26. So how long is, that's like almost 40 years ago, 38 years ago. And it was at a time when there was a proliferation of queer bars all over Montreal. There was lesbian bars, there were gay bars, there were mixed bars. There was a bookstore called L'Androgyne, which was a gay and lesbian bar. We had dances. We were raided by the police often. And it was at a time when there was so much activism around our rights. A little bit harder, what was happening in Newfoundland at the time, a little more difficult, particularly because our education system, when Newfoundland, let's say it right, when Canada joined Newfoundland, part in terms of where that Newfoundland and Labrador would control its own educational system. And it meant that the teachers in Newfoundland and Labrador, that the educational system was exempt from the Federal Human Rights Act. So, we had a Catholic school system, we had a general Protestant one, we had a Pentecostal one, and the Salvation Army. And if you were gay or lesbian, that's because those were the categories we spoke of at the time, you could be fired and have absolutely no recourse. You had no rights.
I eventually probably don't know that's really that system was still really in place up until the late 90s. I know myself, I started school and that was very much what the system was, that the Catholic school system still existed. Then there was the was it when we call the integrated system. But it was still separate than at the time, and there was a big change then, and that was very hard won. Several referendums had to be called to have that change. Do you think that really permeated then the culture in Newfoundland and Labrador, that connection to having those religious systems as part of our school systems and how it affected?
Absolutely. And I remember when we had 30 years ago pride parades in St. John's, and some teachers, notably, a lot of people have heard of Sue Rose, who's been a fabulous advocate for students, and her partner at the time, Ann Shortle. They marched in the Pride Parade, tiny little parade, I tell you, tiny little parade. And they were teachers and they were not protected. So they marched in the Pride Parade with brown paper bags over their heads, with the eyes cut out, not because they were ashamed, not because they were afraid, but because it was their way of making a point. I can remember 30 years ago marching in a parade. Some of us organized this big parade around same-sex marriage 30 years ago in Ottawa. and there were two dykes who had white wedding dresses on, two gay men who were dressed, and a trans guy dressed in a fabulous wedding dress, and I was dressed as a minister, and we did weddings out during this parade. That was 30 years ago.
And I think that was a bit of foreshadowing for 2005.
I think so. And just to say that we have worked so hard, and some people it was very dangerous for them. But for those of us who had community, who had support, a lot of us were in the arts. So it's not like we had jobs where we would be fired. We were able to do this kind of work, and for years and years and years. And just, when you look back at it, you know that our rights were never given to us. They were hard won. They were really hard won. And we continue to have to be vigilant. There was a time in Berlin in the 30s where, the queer community were celebrated and they were free to do what they wanted. And there were queer cabarets and bars and bookstores as well. And then there was a clampdown. So, and I've always been lucky in that I have also gotten strength and empowerment and joy from my activism. I was also very involved in AIDS Act Up in Montreal during the AIDS pandemic, which just took a swath out of the gay community all over the world. And those were really hard times. But because I came from the women's movement and was so used to organizing and advocating and lobbying, that we were able to bring those skills, those of us who were feminists who had been in the women's movement and a lot of lesbians, we really were able to bring those skills that we had to the AIDS movement and work with our brothers at the time. And, we were much more on a binary at that time. We mostly talked about gay and lesbian. And it's so fabulous when we look at the diversity in our queer community and how we are able to work together and how we're able to also have our own spaces when we need them to do what the work we need to do, or the socializing or the talking or whatever.
Yeah. And that's something that we really pushed here too, to have those queer friendly spaces, in not just in urban areas, but in rural ones as well. I'm going to bring in everybody now. And thank you so much, Gerry. Again, talking about the standing on the shoulders of giants, I really do think that you've become a giant within our community. So thank you so much.
I know about that. It's, all the work we do together.
So we'll bring everyone back in to do, I suppose, one last round here. And I'll go to Claudia, I think, first, because Gerry just spoke about how the passion and how the enthusiasm and the energy from activism. Can you relate with what Gerry's describing?
Definitely. When everything was happening with the crosswalk, we had so many people reach out to us, and it was so exciting to get this attention from people I did not know were such big figures in the community. Like Gerry, I got to meet Gerry in the summer after the crosswalk was happening, and it was really inspiring to see someone who is in politics in the province, who is an out individual, wanting to meet us and talk to us about their experience and relate. It was amazing. It gets you really pumped up.
Great.
Awesome. And now, TJ, I know you've had your hand in some activism as well. How do you feel about that? And speaking from, I suppose, the Indigenous perspective as well. I mean, there's a lot of fronts that there needs to be changes made in our society.
For sure. I think, we can't talk about being out and being Indigenous without really looking at the intersectionality.
Yeah. Throw it to Jake. I can bring you back into this now, Jake. We're the Fogo on Prod is planning, I guess, really, I suppose its first really rally and march this time around. Because last year we had a walk and we were part of a parade that had already existed in the community. I don't know if you want to speak to that for a second and the importance of that, because I know we've talked about it within our committee.
Yeah, I mean, last year Pride was just kind of us like celebrating and just like seeing what we could do and what could be done as like the first Pride for the island. And I think this year, I mean, the slogan for Fogo on Pride is celebrating diversity. Yeah, celebrating diversity. And I feel like this year with the march and like doing these panel discussions, we're doing something a bit more tangible, activist work. You know what I mean? So I'm very excited, and we'll hopefully have a good turnout, and the weather will stay nice.
Yes, and trying to adhere to all the COVID-19 restrictions is going to be a challenge for us as well. So I guess one last round, and I want to get everyone's opinion on this now. So if someone is out there and they're listening right now and they're saying, I want to start this in my community. I think I've already kind of touched on this with another question with Claudia. So maybe I'll leave Claudia to last. What advice would you have for someone who is in a rural community, who's not necessarily seeing themselves reflected back in their community? What are those first few steps? Gerry, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I am a big fan of kitchen tables. Some of the most incredible revolutions have started at kitchen tables. And it's so important, it's just so important. Claudia talks about, how important it was for her to meet me. Well, how important it was for me to meet Claudia and the fabulous students who did the stuff in Springdale. But doing activism can be really tough too, and it's so important to find a community of support, to find a few people to do it with. And there also needs to be some joy. Emma Goldman was an incredible anarchist in around the 30s and 40s. She said, if I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution. And we need to do that. We need to dance. We need to celebrate our accomplishments. We need to learn from one another. We need to help one another see when we make mistakes, when we're not inclusive. We need to do all those kinds of things. But really, gather a few people together. Gather people together, even at the kitchen table, and have a kitchen table revolution.
There you go. That sounds like a great title to a book.
Yeah.
Tej, we'll throw it over to you.
Sure. I think I'd echo what Gerry's saying. We need to take up space. I know it's not always safe for people, but if you can find friends or allies or older people that are kind to you, find a way to make yourself connected. Because when it comes to these things, I don't necessarily like to call it activism. I think it's a very popular term right now, but I think when we look at it, it's the work of allyship and it's the work of survival. For some of us, it's not an option to be an activist. It's just us expressing ourselves and demanding to be treated equally. So find your folks.
Mm-hmm. I think the want to take up space, I think, resonates so much with those in the margins in rural areas, because the name of the comedian is not on the top of my tongue right now, but they were a person of color, and they said that all they wanted to do was make themselves small when they were growing up. Because there was they didn't want to expose themselves anymore, and just that thought of wanting to make yourself feel small, to insulate yourself from the possible harm, I think speaks to a lot of people at the margins. And that need to take up space is a very important message. Thank you, Tej. Jake, what do you think?
I mean, I just want to say that, like, if you are like a queer person or someone who, fits in any of the umbrella terms, I guess, to describe that, that you're not alone, I guess, as cheesy as it is to say. Like, there was a number of times in high school I thought, Jesus Christ, I'm the only one like this. Oh, I can't swear, can I?
That's okay. Same space. Keep going.
You're not alone. And like TJ said, sometimes just being yourself and being authentic to yourself is enough of a form of activism. And if you can do that and survive, I think that's us as queer people can take that as being like a bit of a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
Just being able to survive and stuff.
No, and that is I think that's the ultimate goal, really, just to be able to be yourself no matter where you are.
Mhm.
And the last word goes to you, Claudia. Bit of advice.
Some advice, honestly, is what I would say has been said, and everybody has said some form of what I would say would be: you will find your people. They will come to you. They will always come to you. Sometimes you really don't even have to search. If those people will find you, and you won't feel. There are so many people who go through the same experiences as yourself, especially in rural Newfoundland. In Newfoundland, we believe, oh, I live in this small community. There's nobody like me, but you would be surprised. There is so many people who are either in the closet or haven't come out yet, or they just allies. Those people who will support you, they will find you, and there's always the future to look forward to.
There you go. I think that's a good way to end it. To always be looking forward to your future, and be that you can change it. You're in control of it. All right. So thank you so much to Gerry Rogers, TJ Lightfoot, Jake Decker. Round of applause for Claudia Lilly. Round of applause for everybody. Thank you so much for being here for this very important topic. We've had some people jump in here with some comments and questions. I think we really covered a lot of. There was some excellent discussion here. So thank you so much for your time. I think we've got. Oh, there we go. I didn't know if you had one more last thing to say, Gerry.
No, I just saying peace.
Oh, there you go. Also, an excellent message. All right, so we'll let you all folks go backstage again, and thank you so much. Really appreciate it for what you've brought to this discussion here today. It's been a great one, and we are going to have Maddie play us out with one last tune. I think there we go. Maddie's been waiting in the wings the whole time.
Hello. So the last song I'm going to be singing is a song that I recently learned, and I just was flicking through my book and I came across this one, and I thought it was a great one to end with, because all the stuff you guys were talking about your community and having community support and all that stuff, and I just thought that this was a great song to end with. So this is Lean on Me by Bill Withers. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend, and I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna be somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if you have things that you need to borrow for. No one can fill those of your needs that you won't let show. So just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend, and I'll help you carry on. your brother when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. Just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a load that you have to bear, that you can carry, right up the road, and I'll share your load. If you just call me, lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend, and I'll help you carry on. For it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend, and I'll help you carry on. For it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. For it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on.
It must be so difficult to just sing to a camera.
Yeah, I've been doing it all summer. I've been doing it for 8 weeks, so
There you go. You're well practiced, well
used to
rehearsed.
it now.
You're getting lots of love in the comments. People love it. So, and so do we. So thanks you so much for taking your time out of your busy summer to provide us some entertainment. I think we've started the tradition, I think, personally.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be back all the time.
Yeah, we'll see you next year.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. Take care. All right, folks. So that ends our panel discussion on the LGBTQ2 SIA plus rural experiences in Newfoundland, Labrador. Thank you for tuning in. We have another panel discussion happening tomorrow, same time, same bat time, same bat channel. We've got our Pride Guide, which is out, and if anybody wants to read Gerry's bio, as it did make our way into our Pride Guide, as it should. That is there, and it's available on our website, fogoislandpride.org. Our Pride March is this Saturday, August the 15th, at 1 o'clock, starting adjacent to Bangmelly in the community park. Remember, you do need to register if you want to attend that event, as we need to make sure we have people masked up and following the public health restrictions that are placed on us. So it has been a great one, folks. We will see you tomorrow night. Take care.